Uncle said to look through the gaps in the stairs. My 4-year-old niece Alice tugged at my sleeve urgently. Before me lay my husband, unconscious in a hospital bed. A week ago, he was stabbed during a break-in at home, and the perpetrator is still at large. After returning home, I remembered Alice's strange words and checked the stairs. There, in a small gap, I found something blood-stained and tiny. I shivered in shock. Could it be? The thought of an unexpected person being the culprit filled me with fear. Working in human resources at a real estate company, I had married Theo, a salesman, last year after a workplace romance. We were both 25, a bit young for marriage, but our motto was we want kids as soon as possible. This was partly because I adored my niece Alice, who was in preschool. Watching her laugh and pout, I often imagined us as parents. Alice had a mysterious gift. "Aunt Riley, your ring is on the bookshelf," she would say, accurately predicting the location of lost items. Not just once, but many times. My sister often said, "When in trouble, ask Alice, and something good happens." Kids are said to see ghosts, but maybe there's something to it. Maybe our future child will have a special power too. I dreamt of a family with children. However, our newlywed life wasn't smooth. Soon after marriage, we started receiving disturbing letters at home. Addressed to Theo, they contained chilling messages like "break up, I'll get you." Theo reassured me, saying it was just a cruel prank and reported it to the police. The sender was unknown, and we lived in unease. Then, one day at work, Theo's colleague from the sales department, Jacob, came to my office. He handed me a piece of paper. On it were the same words as those found in the strange letters that had been arriving at our home: "Disappear and you're a nuisance." I gasped in fear. Jacob looked serious and said, "It was on Jacob's desk. He's a rising star in sales, so he has enemies. This is troubling." Crushing the paper, he smiled kindly. "I've known Jacob since we started here. If you need anything, just ask." I had no idea Jacob was in such a situation. But it's reassuring to know that he's on my side. My sister was also worried and visited often. Despite the scary letters, with support from those around us, I was determined to stand by Jacob. Little did I know what was to come. "Riley! Theo is unconscious! Come back home immediately!" I received this call from my sister while attending a friend's wedding. It was a Saturday, and Theo was supposed to be working and then home alone. Stabbed during a break-in? I couldn't believe my sister's words. But arriving at the hospital, I found Theo pale and motionless in bed. "Theo! Theo! This can't be happening! Wake up!" I cried, holding his hand, but he didn't move. Only the beeping of machines filled the room. Why did this have to happen? I broke down in tears, and my sister, who had been waiting in the hospital room, comforted me. According to the police, my neighbor had found Jacob, my husband, stabbed and collapsed at home. Apparently, the neighbor, who usually rudely opens our front door without asking, had come to bring the neighborhood newsletter. But this time, it was a blessing in disguise as it led to the early discovery of my husband. There had been a spate of burglaries in the area, so the police suspected it might be the work of the same culprit. "No! It must be the person who's been sending those harassing letters. I told the police about it, remember?" I frantically explained to my sister about the letters and the situation at work. But she cut me off. "Leave the police explanation to me. You should rest, Riley. If only I hadn't gone to that wedding, maybe my husband would have been safe." The regret was unbearable. Despite my fervent hopes for his recovery, a week after the incident, Theo still hadn't regained consciousness. And the police had no leads on the perpetrator. "Theo, our anniversary is coming up soon. Where do you want to go?" I asked my husband, who was connected to numerous tubes in the hospital, but he never responded. No matter how much I tried to hold back, tears kept flowing endlessly. It's hard to cheer up, isn't it? I turned around to find Jacob, who had come to visit, standing there. He had been visiting the hospital room daily, worried about Theo, bringing me flowers and sweets, and offering comfort. "I'm sorry for being such a mess," I said, hastily wiping away my tears. Jacob assured me, "Don't worry about it," and stayed by my side. Then, a young, innocent voice came from behind. "Aunt Riley, who is this man?" I turned to see my niece Alice tilting her head in curiosity. This was her first time visiting the hospital. Alice. It's not. Who is this man? Scolded my sister, then bowed to Jacob, apologizing, sorry for intruding. Are you family? Then I'll leave for today, he said, greeting to my sister before leaving the flowers and exiting. Sorry for coming so suddenly. Alice just insisted on visiting. My sister apologized with her hands together, but Alice, undeterred, walked up to Theo's bedside and stared intently at his face. Uncle said to look under the stairs. There's a company budgie down there, she suddenly blurted out. I was puzzled by her mysterious words. A company budgie under the stairs? But my sister insisted, there's something to what this child says. You should check it out. As visiting hours at the hospital ended, my sister drove me home. As we said goodbye, she told me, call if you need anything, and left. But is there really a gap under the stairs? I wondered, unlocking the front door and heading to the stairs. On the day of the incident, Theo had been found bloodied and collapsed on the stairs. The police had collected evidence, and the area had been cleaned, leaving it spotless. Wait, there's a gap at the edge of the bottom stair. That's when I noticed a small amount of dried blood. I shone a light into the gap and saw something reflecting light. I quickly fetched tweezers to retrieve it, and to my surprise, it was a familiar object. What? This is a badge! The badge, covered in dried blood, was a startling find. The blood on it must be why it was pushed into the gap. Now that I think about it, the police mentioned unnatural abrasions on Theo's fingertips. Maybe he pushed it into the gap himself? The hidden badge could be a message from my husband indicating who the perpetrator was. I immediately called my sister. See, I told you something would turn up. Let's go to the police together, she said hurriedly over the phone, followed by the voice of my niece Alice. The company budgie has to be taken care of, or he'll be finished. One-on-one is troubling. Who's the troublemaker? What? Is this another riddle? Another clue to the case? I asked eagerly, but all I heard over the phone was Alice giggling. Alice was right about something being under the stairs. This riddle must have a clue about the perpetrator. I stared at the blood-stained badge in my hand. Theo must have left this clue, desperately trying to identify his assailant amidst terrible pain. He must have been scared and in agony until he lost consciousness. I won't waste Theo's message. I will catch the culprit myself. I vowed to find the cowardly criminal and seek revenge. Later, I immediately took the badge to the police and went to see my niece. I needed to ask her more about her words. The company budgie has to be taken care of, or he'll be finished. One-on-one is troubling. Who's the troublemaker? Hey, Alice, what do you mean by the company budgie will be finished? It becomes a paper. What? Become a paper? Nope, my niece shook her head. Her words making no sense. Is one-on-one as troubling about the number of people? So it's not troubling if there are two? No, that's too many. That's why it's trouble, she said proudly, but the mystery only deepened. I have no idea what she's talking about. I was so confused, I groaned in frustration. My sister also pondered, it must mean something. But she didn't seem to get it either. I decided to leave my sister's house and went to a cafe to clear my head. While I sipped my coffee, pondering, a businessman in a suit at the next table was about to leave his smartphone behind. You're forgetting your phone, I called out. He hurried back, gratefully saying, thank you. It's the company's phone. I would have had to write a report if I lost it. That's when it hit me. Ah. That's what it means. Finally understanding the riddle, I dashed back to my workplace. A whirlwind of events unfolded to reveal the truth. And then, 5 days later, I was in the hospital room with my unconscious husband. It's been a while. What happened? You've been absent from work for 5 days. I was worried not seeing you even at the hospital, Jacob said, visiting as usual. But I didn't accept the bouquet he offered. Instead, I looked him straight in the eye and spoke quietly. Why did you stab my husband, Jacob, when you're so close to him that you visit him so devotedly? Shocked by my sudden accusation, Jacob's face froze. What are you talking about? The culprit is a burglar, right? He tried to play it off with his usual kind smile. I pulled out the blood-stained badge from my pocket and showed it to him. It was our company's logo badge. Alice's word budgie was absolutely not about a budgie, but about the company logo badge. We've been getting harassment letters at home, and then there's the company logo badge my husband hid, trying to tell us who the culprit is. The perpetrator isn't a burglar, but someone from the company, someone close. I said, looking squarely at Jacob with conviction. You can't possibly suspect me, can you? After all I've done for you. He said, trying to hold my hand with a forced smile. I brushed off his hand and pulled out a copy of the disciplinary report I found in Human Resources. Alice's words, "The company budgie has to go or he'll become paper," meant that he had to submit a disciplinary report for losing the company logo badge. The report was dated 2 days after my husband was stabbed. It could be Theo's company badge. His badge was safely at home. I retorted, instantly dismissing his weak excuse, and Jacob bit his lip in frustration. However, he didn't give up. You're just upset because Theo was stabbed. Don't worry, I'll be here for you now. His eyes were unfocused as he moved closer. I sidestepped him and pulled out some documents from my bag. They were records from the dash cam of the company car he always used. You were at our house at the time of the incident, even though there's no client nearby, right? Being in charge of managing dashcam data in Human Resources, I quickly found out Jacob's movements at the time of the incident. He probably planned to delete the data later, but since it was a company car, the records were locked to prevent tampering. Did you have feelings for me? Jacob's eyes darted around, clearly flustered. I had suspected him and asked other colleagues about it. It turned out that Jacob had always been secretly in love with me. Furthermore, he resented the fact that my husband had beaten him to proposing to me. Alice's words, "one-on-one is troubling. Who's the troublemaker?" meant that there's only one person you can marry, and if someone is already married, their existence becomes a nuisance. So, you harassed us, hoping we'd break up out of fear. That's despicable. Jacob showed his anger upon hearing my words. I loved you much more than Theo ever did. I thought scaring you would make you break up. He stamped his feet in frustration. Since the letters alone weren't effective, I decided to put a knife in your mailbox next. I thought that would wake you up with fear. But, unluckily for him, my husband came home earlier than expected and caught him taking out the knife. His temper tantrum grew louder. Theo arrogantly shouted at me, "So you were the culprit. Do you realize how much you've scared Riley? Stay away from my wife," he said. So, in your anger, you stabbed my husband with the knife you were holding, intending to put in the mailbox. Exactly. It was all for you. Now I just have to finish him off. Jacob, now defiant, rushed towards the bed to strangle Theo. In a desperate attempt to protect Theo, I struggled to push Jacob away. Just then, I heard his hoarse voice saying, "Enough is enough." Startled by this unexpected turn of events, Jacob froze for a moment. I took this chance to throw my entire body at him with all my strength. He crashed into the door with a loud bang, and the curtain he grabbed tore apart with a ripping sound. The medical staff, alerted by the unusual noise, quickly arrived at the scene. "Call the police!" I shouted. The staff gathered around, some helping to restrain Jacob, others calling 911 in a frenzy. Later, as the police arrived and I explained the situation, handing over Jacob, he cried out in a half-sob. I was so close to happiness. What nonsense are you spouting? I never had any intention of being with you. I glared at Jacob and pushed him away firmly. I always loved you. I loved you so much. Jacob sobbed like a child. But his selfish reasoning meant nothing to me. The only person I love is my husband Theo. Don't you dare show your face to me again. Crying pitifully, Jacob was taken away by the police. Afterwards, Jacob was found guilty based on my husband's testimony and was sentenced to about 7 years in prison. My husband demanded $50,000 in damages from him. With Jacob losing his job and now facing financial troubles, he'll have a hard time even when he gets out. Meanwhile, today I've invited my sister and niece Alice over for lunch with my husband and me. As we sat at the table filled with food, Alice, with a smile, said, "The new chair isn't just one. It's two." My husband and I exchanged glances. It seems I'm pregnant with twins. Oh my, I need to go to the OBGYN right away.